action and file and work with other activists, or you're a trustee of a pension fund, or even if you have an insurance policy and you write to the CIO saying, please vote your shares on, you're bound to be an Exxon, please vote your shares on climate because I care, and I will switch to an insurance company who does vote their shares on climate. There are so many things that you can do, and so many different newsletters you can read and pick up, and conversations like this that Exxon has in Wandsworth. And I'm going to stop there. I think I'm an optimist, Caroline. I started off that the world looks like it's going to hell in a handbasket. If you ask any of the scientists, all the signals and the science look awful, but we've got everything that we need to build this new energy system. And part of changing capitalism is moving the shift from the old energy system to the new energy system. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Definitely lots of numbers and graphs that have been thrown at us there. I suppose, I do not remember all. So I guess, when you're optimistic like that, so when does the change happen? When does the switch happen? Do you have a view of that too? Or
I'm really interested to see in the UK what the next government's going to do. It's most likely going to be a Labour government with this new energy company that's going to bring in renewable energy and begin that revolution. I think there's so many things we can do around building a different grid, bringing householders as manufacturers of energy. I think that is part of the optimism I've got and the chance. Okay, are there enough cable manufacturers to make the cables to bring the energy from the North Sea? I also am a great believer in the North Sea renewable energy grid that people talk about. So Norway, France, Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, building a huge system of wind turbines across the North Sea that connects Europe to the same grid that balances European energy demand and makes it completely green. I'm excited by that. It will take a bit of time, but it can all be doable within a generation. So.
Do you think we got enough metal and
material
to be
I do.
that?
No,
yeah?
I do. I mean, the thing people keep saying that they're critical minerals, but the thing is about this is that there's 10 times more critical minerals available than global demand for those metals that are known of. I mean, getting it out and whether we can get it out in the right places is going to be the challenge. But the great thing about it is it's infinitely renewable. So once you break down your car, you don't need to chuck the copper in a skip and go and find new copper. You recycle it, and that's the beauty of the electrical system we're building. Is a lot of these materials are recyclable, and also we're beginning to learn the chemistry table. Lithium sounds an awful lot like sodium, which is salt, and people. I'm not a chemist, so I'm probably talking loads of rubbish, but. I'm told by my friends that as you go across the chemistry table, there's all these other much more common things like sodium that we can work out and think through about how they can become transmitters of electrical signals. And I still think that, we're hearing all the time of innovation in battery storage. It's cheaper, it's faster, hard batteries, we talk about all kinds of different batteries. We're innovating all the time. There's no one answer to this. We're constantly innovating, and new announcements happening all the time about breakthroughs in technology on the clean technology side. So that makes me a technology optimist. But let me be clear, we still need strong governments, we still need policy, we still need regulation. We still need voters. We still need to end a system and build a new one. We still need the policy to stop subsidising fossil fuels. So I'm not saying, I'm not one of these people that says, Elon Musk has got it, we can all go home. No, far from it. I'm saying we have the technology solutions, but we need policy. We need political action that gets rid of fossil fuel subsidies. We need a carbon price on fossil fuels. All these things we need, as well as technology.
We'd like to open the questions to the floor. Shall we do, I don't know your name, but behind the computer you had do you want to do take 2 or 3 questions and then respond, or
No,
we do
let's
one by one?
Let's have 2 or 3 questions at a time.
So I'll take you just behind the computer.
No, I just wanted to follow up on that.
Sorry?
I just wanted to follow up on what you just said.
Oh, well.
As part of the big political change, do you see an end to capitalism as part of that? And if not, why not?
I think we can build it differently. Do I think that we're going to stop people going to a farmer's market down the road on a Sunday morning because somebody's selling you something and then somebody's made a bit of money from selling you some vegetables? No, I don't think the marketplace of trade will disappear. I do think that we'll break up concentrations of power, political power and financial power. And I do think we can change that kind of thing. I think we can break up the media barons. I think we can break up the banks. I think we can. Do you know there was a stock market in every major city in the UK? There was one in Bristol, there was one in Birmingham, there was one in Glasgow, there was one in Manchester. You know they've all disappeared in the last 25 years. The last one to go was the Birmingham stock market. It was a local market for local entrepreneurs. What happened when we created the London stock market is that we moved our capital to huge mining giants like Eurasia Natural Resources, which is, funding Asian mining companies, and we use people's pension funds in the UK. I think we can decentralise markets. I think there used to be local banks. There used to be local power companies where people built and sold power locally until we created these megaliths like British Gas and Scottish and Southern. I think we can break up. We can have a different form of markets. I'm not saying we can overthrow it. You certainly can't vote to overthrow it, but I think you can build things differently and reward things differently. Like cooperatives, I'm a big fan of cooperatives. I answered one question when I said I was going to take 3, didn't I?
That's okay. You said it's just a continuation. So
a quick follow-up question. It's about you said the return is not going to be the same.
No.
And so it's about basically, do you think we can keep having the same economic growth or not?
When you pull down a power station, a gas-fired power station, that builds GDP. Mm-hmm. And when you build a renewable energy system, that builds GDP. And when you take back waste and recycle it, that adds to GDP. So a lot of what's discussed about growth suggests that we need to absorb and take lots more resources. No, I think we can dematerialise, but we can still build an economy that's thriving. But we can, again, it's a case of doing it differently. But do I think that growth for growth's sake, which is what politicians talk about? No, I don't think we need to do that. But on the question about renewable energy being different, why people have made so much money from oil and gas? If you produce at $1 and sell at $10. Now the thing about renewable energy is actually you're going to be building a market of thousands and millions of sellers. And in a perfect market with millions of buyers and millions of sellers, economic theory, and remember I trained as an economist, so that makes me wrong, but the price drifts towards the lowest suppliers, the lowest cost supplier, the lowest marginal cost supplier. So actually I'm one of these people who thinks energy will get cheaper because you don't have these monopolistic people who concentrate power, and which is what we've got at the moment. So I think energy will get cheaper. Now, once energy gets cheaper, it could be that household bills will halve, and you go and spend your savings on something completely different. You might be able to afford food, you might be able to, because I know lots of people still use food banks, whether any over the UK, and it could be that we'll halve the cost of something and people will use it differently. I don't know what the answer to it is, but I think that it would be a good thing. So there was those two down on the comments.
So yeah, the lady with the pink top and then the lady with the glasses there. We'll take those 2 questions. I'll have to repeat them for the camera.
So many questions. I am concerned that we will dig up the oceans to get to metals, or that Russia has invaded Ukraine because there are critical metals there. But I think I went to Hostings last weekend, and the Conservative candidate said that, I don't know if he was saying that the first person to have an environmental clause in their manifesto, but he said the first environmental Conservative was Margaret Thatcher. Now, you could turn around and say, well, yes, she shut all coal mines. But my question is, as we do all this, how do we stop destroying the communities that depend on making petrol cars, or, you know, it's all very well saying we need to make this transition, but people and communities need to survive in the meantime, and it's how we handle that.
Should we take a second question?
My question is about I think the business model of fossil fuel, oil and gas, is now moving to manufacturing plastics, isn't it?
It is.
And plastics is still going to, what we need to do is have a plastics treaty as well.
Shall I tell this too? So the first one, you're right about Margaret Thatcher, because she was a scientist and she recognised the science of climate change. But I think closing down the coal industry was more about destroying the unions than it was about destroying the coal industry. They just happened. One was followed, her desire to destroy the unions led to the end of the coal system, coal building. But I don't think she cared particularly for coal or the working communities. Look, you're right, we need a just transition. I haven't talked about the just transition. And the other founder, carbon tracker, Professor Nick Robbins at the London School of Economics, his big thing is the just transition. But I hear a lot of oil and gas companies saying, please don't change now because we need the change to be just, which is another way of saying we don't want it ever. And you'll hear that language used. For a long time, when I first started working on this 25 years ago, Harland & Wolff was a very successful shipping company in Northern Ireland and Belfast, and I used to talk for ages about how the UK could have led the world in offshore maintenance of wind, and we could have built a domestic UK wind manufacturing capability led with the engineers in Harland & Wolff, and not just there, but Tyneside and the shipping industry. But we didn't do that. We just stayed behind. And the same with our technology around batteries. We nearly built a £1 billion battery, electric battery thing. Do you remember that thing which the UK government wasn't able to save? And we're very good at thinking about how to defend what we've got, as opposed to kicking the ball down the end of the pitch and running towards where's it going to be. And I think the system where we could be is in a much more efficient manufacturing and energy system. And I'm actually one of those people who thinks if Scotland makes the world's cheapest energy, and it's kind of pretty much does, let's move manufacturing to Scotland and move the manufacturing jobs. If artificial intelligence is going to use huge amounts of computer power, which is what we're told is where, let's move AI centres and data centres to Scotland, to the Outer Hebrides, you know. Let's think about where our energy is and let's move it to where the cheapest forms of energy is. There was another point you made about mining mineral resources. I set up another tracker called planet-tracker.org, and we've written 2 papers on why we don't need to do ultra-deep water mining for critical minerals, and we go through all the technical and scientific arguments against it. On plastics, yes, so the oil and gas companies say that the forecast, 50% of the forecast growth in demand is going to come from the world using more plastics. And most of that growth is going to come from the global south because they need plastic bags and plastic wrapping their food, as if they haven't got by the last 50 years without plastic bags and plastic wrappers on their food. You're absolutely right, we need a plastics treaty, and there's another part of planet-tracker.org, which is the other team that works with me. We have a whole section on plastics and what we need to do to stop plastics. And one of my good colleagues, remember the scene from The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, where he asked somebody around the swimming pool what my next job should be, and the older guy said, mark my words, your future's in plastics. So we wrote a report called The Future's Not in Plastics. And I completely agree with you, it's not in plastics, and we need to stop the growth of the plastics industry as much as we need to do to stop the growth of oil and gas for combustion energy.
So I'll start from the right, with the beard, and then with the glasses, and then we'll come to the left. I don't know. Obviously, I can't see behind Pat, but so yeah, sorry, you'll have your turn.
Bit of a left field question. If I had $1 billion, what would be the best way to spend that to get the quickest impact, in your opinion?
Oh my word. So, if you, from a campaigning point of view, yesterday, the global oil and gas industry, they have a set of standard setters. It's a Society of Petroleum Engineers, and they decide what is the legal definition of an oil and gas reserve. It's called PRIMS, P-R-I-M-S, and if you go to the Society of Petroleum Engineers, they'll lay it all out. Why is it important? Is because their content goes into all the oil and gas IPOs that happen on the London stock market. So Ithaca Energy, that owns Rosebank, was the biggest IPO in the London, initial public offering in the London Stock Exchange a couple of years ago. So they decide what's an oil and gas reserve. And when you read it, they explicitly say, we don't consider climate change when we analyse reserves. So you go back to the beginning of contractors' work. It's all about oil and gas reserves and coal reserves. And so I've been trying to raise £100,000 for the last 2 years to attack that. And change the accounting definition of reserve. So a reserve is not a reserve if producing it breaches the goals of the Paris Agreement. So I had a firm of lawyers that I worked with, all pro bono, to produce a submission which we put in yesterday on it. I would do very selective, with my £1 billion, I'd use $1 million of it for very selective campaigning against the regulations that support the fossil fuel industry. Of course it's subsidies, but there's a whole load of other things. So when the emails came back from the Society of Petroleum Engineers as to the team looking at our submission, back comes Chevron's email. It's Chevron and all the oil companies that decide what goes into a prospectus, which is what, remember my story about Extrata, the coal company? They decide this, and we've allowed them to decide it. So I would then spend another $1 million lobbying politicians to change the law. But when I get really technical, I mean, a lot of my friends go, I'm really sorry, Mark, I haven't a clue what you're talking about. But that's why I'm pleased to work in philanthropy, because I'm allowed to spend every day reading this stuff. And I read do you know Saudi Aramco just raised another $15 billion from selling shares in Saudi Aramco to international investors, including British institutions. So I was in America seeing my funds a couple of weeks ago, and I woke up very early, so I read the Saudi Aramco prospectus. It's 506 pages, and I read it from the beginning to the end to see how many times they mention the Paris Global Climate Agreement, and how many times they mention 1.5 degrees. They mention 1.5 once in a 506-page document, and they mention the Paris Agreement twice. All the rest is all about how they're going to produce all these oil and gas reserves for the next 100 years. I will be attacking the financial support. That's why money rebellion is so important. We know what we need to. So that's 2 million of the 998 million we've got. I would spend another lot protecting indigenous people's land rights. I was a trustee of the Rainforest Foundation for about a decade, and there's a great website called mappingforrights.org, which almost gives an indigenous person a satellite thing to upload their ancestral lands, so that if a mining company or an oil company comes into prospect, they can go to the courts and say, no, this is our ancestral lands. I will protect indigenous people's rights, but that will probably spend most of the rest of that billion. But policy and regulation, I'd spend it on getting the right policy and regulation. I so hate you for asking that question. This is such a good question, but we all have how we'd spend our billion. Yeah.
So we had Glyn.
Yeah.
And then Keith.
I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on the paper by Simon Michel, which was about resources. His paper essentially did a giant stock take of resources of the world. He came up with the conclusion that if everyone was going to do what they said they were doing,
we need 5 planets.
they were out by orders of magnitude, actual resources.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you've done anything on that.
No, because there's similar studies that have been done over the years, that if everyone was to have the same living standards in the world as we have today, for each of us living in the global north, we would need 5 planets or 3 planets to give everyone that. And obviously, and of course everyone in Sub-Saharan Africa has the right to a fridge or a TV or a mobile phone or a laptop. yeah, there's some fundamental questions of justice about how we distribute the resources that we've got. And that's not a question I can answer readily, because it means us giving up all the things that we've lived and benefited from in our Western lives and our Western livelihoods. So yeah, we become monks. We don't need anything.
I think there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of
no,
things
there's
that we
loads of
can
things we can do.
change
Completely right.
as well. But yeah, Keith?
Many people, including myself, are getting very excited about hydrogen and its role in possible energy, alleviating the problems about rare earth metals, etc. What do you think about the future of hydrogen?
Good gracious. Okay, so have you read Michael Liebreich's The Seven Ladder Steps of Hydrogen?
Yeah.
Okay, you have,
It's
right.
brilliant.
So Michael Liebreich, spelled Leibrich, is a brilliant writer on a whole bunch of things, and he's the founder of New Energy Finance, which is now Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And you can go online and read his demolition of the hydrogen economy.
There's a video,
There's a video.
just a lecture with Imperial College.
Okay, so he's
It's
done a
on
lecture with
YouTube.
Imperial College on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
so there was an argument that says we can manufacture huge, enormous quantities of green hydrogen and put it in coal-fired power station and accelerate it and displace coal really, really quickly. And it's all dependent on having vast amounts of renewable energy and cheap electrolyzers to manufacture absolute ginormous quantities of green hydrogen that we can put into power and use it as a fuel. It might be true, but Michael Liebreich gives the other arguments as to why hydrogen isn't the answer, and that actually manufactured technologies like battery and wind. So I've got to say, I personally haven't sat down and come to a conclusion on it. And I think, like a lot of things, it's one thing or another. But at the moment, I'm convinced that Michael Liebreich's economic analysis of actually how you manufacture, how you make hydrogen, and the energy from making hydrogen, and manufacturing energy from solar is just so more efficient in terms of the energy deployment and the amount of energy we get out of the manufacturing process, whereas hydrogen, the economics don't work just as well. But that could change, and I'm keeping an open mind on it.
The guy you mentioned, the head of Octopus Energy,
Greg Jackson.
Yeah, he's on the panel at the Imperial College presentation with Michael Liebreich, and they're asked what's their reaction to the lecture, and Greg Jackson says, brutal, because he destroys entirely the argument for green hydrogen. It's just phenomenally expensive. It's not. He says we should only use it where we can't use anything else. And it is not a kind of, we've got all this renewable energy, we can just make hydrogen with it. It's very, very energy hungry.
At the moment, but is there a possibility of something?
Yeah, let's say the jury's out on it. I think that's the safest place to
Jury's out. Yeah.
Watch the video, and there's a good jury on that video.
Right.
I think, Peter, you actually had your hand up earlier. I don't know if your
I
question still
I
stands.
did, yes, it wasn't a question. I just wanted to say you were talking about the interconnect cables
Yeah.
from the UK to the Netherlands and Germany and France. I just watched a couple of really interesting YouTube videos from National Grid just about how far back in time they started making these interconnects and how fascinating it is, and that the next generation, because at the moment what's happening is like Dogger Bank wind turbines, the electricity comes onshore and then it goes through the interconnect through to the Netherlands. The next generation, the electricity is going to go into substations under the sea and go where the demand is round Europe, which is
Amazing.
incredible. Yeah.
And in our lifetimes as well.
Mm.
Are we done?
No, we had Ben, Caroline, and then the lady in the chat. Sorry.
No,
You want to sit? Or do you
Somebody going to
wanna
get me a pint of beer? Somebody
Okay.
Big bit, that got
Did
bit.
you have a question? No?
Yeah, that got bit.
Thank you. Yeah. I thought you had a question.
Yeah, just coming back to capitalism a minute.
Yeah.
So, like the model of capitalism, the way that I guess it's in two parts question. One is the model of it coming into kind of like paying dividends to the shareholders, and whether that model could change maybe because it seems like it kind of, I don't know, it drives towards profit and becomes very unjust and unequal. And the second part is more general about like, us all here investing, and we want to get the best returns, and this seems to be driving that. And do you think there could be like a fundamental shift in the way that we think about money, that we're not trying to get the most out of, but we're not trying to get the most profit for ourselves, but actually maybe we're trying to think of it in terms of our communities and other people's communities?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you say rings true. In the early years when I was working in the investment management industry, I tried to put a lot of our money at Triodos Bank, which is a Rudolf Steiner-based bank down in Bristol, which you probably know about. Where you could be transparent in all the projects that are lent to you, every single project you could see, the community bookshop or the organic farm, and I love that transparency. And you didn't get paid much on your interest, but at least you knew what was happening. And then I became a big fan of FX, ETHEX, which is an investment club for co-ops and social enterprises, where they do these community share offerings. And if you think about a cooperative for a minute, do you remember the co-op dividend, which is after everyone used the store at the end of the year, if there was surplus money, you got paid a dividend. And that kind of form of markets where any surplus is returned back to the community, if there is any surplus, but then there's a negotiation. It could be that the surplus went to pay workers' benefits, or it went to some other use. So we don't need to have the system we've got in its completion. What you're really talking about is markets for the purpose of speculation. And I'm going to teach you to suck eggs, which is you buy a share worth £1, 100 people buy a share worth £1. One person comes in and buys a share from somebody else and it's worth £1, 5p. Now, when that happens, everybody's shares, the other 99s, everyone else's shares are now worth £1 and 5p. And that's how speculation happens. One person comes in, and it doesn't just drive up the share price for the person who's bought the share or sold the share. It's driven up for everybody else. So you've just sat there, you've done nothing at all, and you wake up the following morning, that share that you thought was worth £1, you turn on the TV or you pick up the paper, it's suddenly worth £1.05, and everyone's gone, bloody hell, that's amazing, I've done nothing. And that's essentially the nature of speculation. You're always constantly trying to do something that drives prices up, and it could be gaming.com, these things in America that, these bathroom companies whose share prices go up 5 times because someone on the internet has said it's a buy. It's all completely crazy stuff. But once that exists, it's difficult to remove it. And those who know me well, the 5 years before I built Carbon Tracker, I built something called, do you remember the Social Stock Exchange?
Yes.
Socialstockexchange.com, where I try to build a completely new market for social enterprises and B corporations and community benefit companies to try and get rid of that speculation and try and create a new marketplace. It worked okay for 3 or 4 years until the board decided they didn't want me any longer, so that's why I sort of left that and built Carbon Tracker instead. But it's something I think about a lot, actually. I don't know what the answer is. I know the direction travel is going, it's just I don't know what the answer is.
So it's 8:30, so maybe, Caroline had one, you? Okay. It's up to, yeah. There was somebody there behind, you said, right? No? Yeah. Otherwise, we'll take those 2 questions, Rafaela and you, and then Mark can answer them quickly, or so. Yeah, please go ahead with your question. It is 8:30, but we have 2 remaining questions. Shall we listen to the questions and then you can take as long or as little as you want to respond to those questions? Yeah.
No, it's fine. So, those of you wondering why did I leave the city, it was because of that. So, next time you go on a protest as an Extinction Rebellion, remember there's always a price. What is it?
Well, thank you very much for your talk. Just wanted to ask, what will it actually take for financial companies to divest from fossil fuels? I've touched on this already, but something.
Okay, good question.
So this is a question about.
We couldn't hear it. Sorry.
So this is a question
What
about
would it take for?
divestment.
What would it take for investment companies to finally divest from fossil fuels? Okay.
And then should we quickly hear Rafaela's question, and then.
There's a room full of a lot of activists. What
Yeah.
target do you think we should be focusing on?
Is there anything you want us to target? We do the good cop, bad cop, so we're very happy to do that.
Yeah. Don't do it that way because there's always consequences. I genuinely believe keeping the movement going to divest fossil fuels is important. The other approach to this, so the other argument people have is that you need to take control of the boards of fossil fuel companies, put your own people in charge, and begin the process of winding them down, manage decline. And I was involved in, when I lived in Australia, against a company in Australia called, it was a logging company, wood chip company called Guns. You won't have heard of it now, but the Wilderness Society campaigned against them, and I was involved in campaigning against them. And it ended up with the campaigners taking control of the company and the board, and then knocking down the chip mill in Tasmania. I mean, that was an amazing way of doing it, but it required a lot of will to take control of the board. You had to convince all the shareholders. It's not easily done. So the arguments to divest. Okay, so the questions that people ask me when I'm out presenting in the city to meet investors is when will the oil price, when will oil demand be destroyed because of electrification, and when will oil prices go down? And it's that tipping point that destroys the profitability of the oil and gas companies. And what happens if plastics doesn't materialise? So the arguments I use is the inevitability of the energy transition. No matter what you say, it's creeping up really fast, and do you want to hold the shares of a company where the demand for their core product is going to disappear? So I use that argument, and then I go do something very similar. I don't say the moral case is to do this because you're destroying the planet. I say actually your whole idea of the value that you give to these companies is incoherent because their core product. It's a bit like saying buy Blockbuster videos. You probably don't even know what Blockbuster videos is, but buy Blockbuster videos just as Netflix is being launched. Of course we don't go to a shop and buy a video and take it home and pay a late fee because we didn't get it back to the shop on time. We just buy a film through Netflix. It's just logical common sense. The same arguments. People understand those arguments. The one thing that I would do, and it's something that I feel passionately about, is that we should have a moratorium on coal, oil and gas IPOs in the London Stock Exchange. We should say to the Labour government, oops, I think there's going to be a Labour government. I think we all believe that there's going to be a Labour government. There should be no new share placements for fossil fuel companies on the London market, and there should be no new bond placements. Why does bond placements? A bond is a bit like a bank loan, which you issue a note to investors in the city, and they promise to pay back after 10 years and pay you 7% a year. It's a form of a bank loan, but it's more risky. And fossil fuel companies raise bond finance on the market all the time from pension funds. I would put a ban on that. I'll just ban it in the UK and then extend the ban globally. And part of my £1 billion that you're going to send me tomorrow is to have a global campaign to decarbonise the world's financial markets by putting on a ban on fossil fuel companies for raising money to expand what they're doing. And that's how I would do it. Because if you couldn't buy shares in Ithaca Energy when it listed as a pension fund, because nobody could, then your pension fund will be forced to not buy them, and they will begin the natural process of divesting. Same with the bond markets. I would have started there.
So we're targeting labour in the stock exchange next.
Yeah,
We are
yeah,
talking
that's
to a
right.
group doing toxic bonds.
Oh, of course, yeah, the
So,
toxic, yeah, of course.
So, yeah.
Sunrise Toxic Bonds Initiative,
Yeah,
yes, of course.
yeah. So,
Thank you very much,
anyway,
everybody.
thank you very much.
Is that all right? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do it all without any